I want space, here's your space. I like men that look like they can pick me up and throw me around. A message every 30 minutes saying, I'm alive, I'm alive, I'm alive. It was not my fault at all. I was doing everything correctly. So I used to watch educational YouTube videos on what makes a healthy relationship. So I was educated on it also. Will I ever do it? Probably not. I'm a big bhattu. My mother gets her Botox done and she posts a selfie saying, just with my fresh new fillers and Botox, this is how I've been raised. Even if you're not following Rakhi Sawant, you're following Rakhi Sawant. You can't not follow Rakhi Sawant. Passed out, woke up, partied again, passed out again, multiple times in one night. Party doesn't stop when you pass out.
Welcome to In the Ring with Filmfare. I'm in conversation with a feisty, funky, and very driven person who I must add is also a huge favorite of mine. I have like this soft spot for her. So please meet Alaya F. Hi.
Hello. What
Thank
a
you
lovely introduction. Always. I
Thank
swear
you
every
for-
time I meet you, I feel so happy.
So you were telling me just before we start the interview, you feel overwhelmed. Why
Yeah.
do you feel overwhelmed?
Like we were discussing before the interview officially started, it's just I think because I finally reached that point. So I'm assuming it happens to most actors. I like to believe so I don't feel as alone in this. But I think there comes a point in an actor's life where you suddenly have to realize that you can't control everything or perfect everything, because it's such a public medium. If you mess up a little bit or you're not having your best day, looking your best or acting your best, or it's there forever for you to see and for other people to see. And so there's this need that sort of comes in to sort of do everything as perfectly as you can in that moment. A lot of the time that is possible, and that those are wonderful days, but a lot of the time it's not. Like today I'm having a whirlwind of a day where it's one chaos after another, which is why I'm so happy that there's a familiar face here. Because if I was doing another interview, where you have to like really manage yourself and like be careful, that would have been a whole different scenario. So I guess that's why I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm just trying to find my balance, trying to find where to let go.
But other than that, what's the fun part of being independent?
Honestly, everything. I love the fun parts of being independent. As much as I might complain about being overwhelmed and having too many responsibilities and having too much to do, I also think I thrive my best in those situations and circumstances. I think I am my best self when I am figuring things out and feeling like an adult and feeling like, oh my God, I have so much to do. So many people depend on me. And, how will this home run without me? I love it. It makes me feel important in some, in some weird way. I have thoroughly enjoyed being independent. Whether it was the time when I moved to New York, my mother had this running joke where I would keep saying, Mama, I need space, I need space. And so my mother used to gift me, on my birthday, she got a cake made, which was a body of an astronaut and my head in the middle of it, all in the middle of space. And she was like, and the cake said, I want space, here's your space. So stupid things like that. There was another birthday where, how there's these certificates, whatever, you can buy a star for someone and buy like some land on the moon. She would gift me all of that for my birthday as like a joke because I used to say it so much. So I've always been that kid from when I was really young. And also maybe happens because I am the oldest out of all my cousins. Normally when I walk into a room, I'm the youngest everywhere, but in my cousins, I'm the oldest. So actually I have that whole older sibling vibe, which is always wanting to be in control and sometimes even having to be in control. So whether it's living alone, especially once I had lived in New York by myself, then to come back to Bombay and be in an environment where you're not as independent and as alone, even though my family is strict and
Yeah.
controlling and does not give me my freedom and space.
But by then your mother had moved to Goa, right?
No. By the time I come back from New York, no. But a little while after that, yeah. And then very shortly after, the second I got properly financially independent, I moved out. My mother was sobbing when I told her, but she lived in Goa at that point. So I was like, what do you mean even you don't live at home anymore? She was like, no, but it's like when I'm coming home, I like to know that my babies are at home. So now you come to my other home and we'll spend the same time together. And that's what we do now. My home is a space where everyone comes and chills. But yeah.
Were you a rebel child? Were you completely annoying? Were you always fighting with your parents?
Yes.
And what was the causes of your rebel?
Me and my mother, both very strong personalities, we were always arguing, always fighting. But the way my mother is also, we'd be like shouting, screaming, slamming doors of the house and everything. And then half an hour later, she'd come to the room and she'd be like, Migu, do you want some dinner? Want to sit and have dinner with me on the table? And I'd also be like, yeah, okay, fine. You go sit, we'd have dinner. Like nothing happened before that.
But what were the points of your conflict?
So another thing with being the oldest child is that you have to fight for all the rights. And then your younger siblings
Gets it all.
get it by default because you got it. So
Yeah.
it's the little things. When I wanted a phone, all my friends had a phone. And my mother said, you can't get a phone till the age of 13. Cannot. Absolutely not. But all my friends had started getting phones around 11 and 12. By 12, everyone had their phones, and on their birthdays, they were getting it. That small Nokia Dabba phone, and like, that time ka. And my birthday comes right at the end of the year. So I was trying to convince my mother to let me have a phone. And I was like, till 13, you're asking me to wait. My friends have 1.5 years. All of them are chatting, and doing everything. I can't be left out. And I remember it was just the biggest fight in the world, day in and day out. And then finally, I got it at the age of 12. 1 year, I managed to argue my way down. Still the last out of all my friends. I was the last. Got my phone. My brother, he got a BlackBerry. First, I got a Nokia 25, whatever. I don't even remember what it was, 258 something. My brother, without even fighting, without asking for anything, he's a very quiet personality, he got a BlackBerry Curve at the age of 11. I was like, what is this? How does this make sense? And that time, Blackberries were really cool.
Yeah.
So that was horrifying to me. I was like, this is what it is. Curfews. My mother was actually pretty strict at that time. Also very concerned about safety, this, that, Curfews were a big thing, as is, I think, for everyone. Finally, I reached a compromise with my mother. She said, okay, fine, you can
Your
be.
mother gave you curfew.
Yeah, because my mother
I
never
have to
had
tell
curfews.
you some stories about your
yeah.
mom.
So my mother's was the opposite, right? She never had curfews.
Yeah.
And all her friends used to have curfews. So she used to go to her mother and say, Mama, why can't you care about me? Why can't you give me curfews? And my nanny used to be like, I do care about you, but I do trust you. I think you'll come back when you want to come back.
Yeah.
And and she was like, no, give me a curfew. She's like, what do you want your curfew to be? I'll give you that curfew. So that was that side. So my mother went from demanding a curfew and thinking that that was love. And so to show me her love, she insisted on curfews. Lots of arguments, lots of fights, day in and day out. Once something is in my head, I'll also go at it. Like any conversation that will happen, it'll circle back to that. Finally, after arguing for like months and months and months, I got this thing where, okay, fine, you can be out after 12 a.m. But after 12 a.m., she needs an update every 30 minutes. Of course, there's a time limit to that also, like till 2. But after 12, every 30 minutes, an update needs to come. So I started it by saying, hi, I'm here, I'm okay. Eventually, I got so frustrated with it, I would just send a message every 30 minutes saying, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm alive. That's it. That's what I would do. I got so frustrated. I was like, what do you think is really happening? It's not like I go out, that way my parents protected me. I had a car, driver, all of that. My friends didn't even have that. I was everyone's carpool. So, it's like many parents depended on me. What did my mother think I was going to do? So, just absurd things like that. My brother, by the way, never had a curfew because he's a boy. I guess the fear is also different in a lot of ways, but yeah, so all these things.
And you know why I find you extremely boring compared to the kind of
Yeah.
bohemian lifestyle. Your grandparents were the first flower children of the,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you've heard stories and you've read your grandmother's book.
Yeah.
Do you feel like what changed? How come you didn't have that kind of wild streak?
I did. And then I realized it was just too stressful. It's actually very stressful being rebellious. It really is. Because it's like you're constantly in this fight mode. And anyone that's actually rebellious, and I can see it even in my mother, and I didn't know my grandmother because she passed away when I was really young. But from the stories I hear, you have to just be unapologetically yourself, of course. And you have to be open to having most people disagree with you or disapprove of what you're doing. That's why you're rebellious, right? You're doing things that other people either don't consider the right way, or they probably don't look at as appreciatively, or whatever it may be. I just realized that it's great to have an opinion, but there are times where you don't really need to voice your opinion. It's okay to let another person have an opinion. And I got into this thing of buying my peace. Can I have peace here? Or is it really that important for me to be rebellious here and fight here and give my point here and give my stance here? If it's very important, I'll always do it.
Tell me the most rebellious and crazy thing that you've done.
I can't.
Okay,
can't.
something that's not censorable.
I don't know. It was just anything. Like I was just in always fight mode. I don't know how to explain it otherwise. I think the entire time I was in New York, as a whole, was just a crazy, rebellious, mad journey.
When you also went to acting school.
When I also went to acting school, I can't think of a particular one instance. I'll think for the next time when we're sitting and chatting. Because what's coming to my head, I definitely can't say. Atul, who is sitting right here, is going to have a panic attack.
We'll ignore it. We'll ignore it.
No, this I really can't say. You'll also be like, "Kyun bola itna?"
No, what I also mean is, your mother had no filters.
Yeah,
Okay.
still doesn't.
So, and she wrote a column and
Yeah.
all of that. She did that. Did you at any point when you wanted to join the industry and you're supposed to maintain a certain decorum, did you ask her, please calm down?
Yes.
Just go off Twitter.
Yes.
Or did you any such thing?
Yes. I think you know the story, which is why you've asked this.
No, I'm just asking.
I very much so. The issue is that no one really knew of me except the fact that I was about to come into the industry, but people knew my mother and they knew her opinions even also. People were unable to separate the two. People naturally, by default, just assume that those opinions are also my opinion. I'm also probably like that. I also probably think those things. Nothing wrong with that. But I just didn't want to be thinking of all of that while I was prepping and training and wanting to just get in. And there was one time where I sat over the table. I think my mother was that time getting very angry and tweeting every day about the Warsaw beach cleanup and all of that, or something or the other. She was always arguing about something. And some two tweets had gone viral about something and whatever. I went to her and I said, Mama, I don't mean to censor you. I don't mean to tell you don't say what you want to say. But for 2 years, can you not? For 2 years, can you just not say anything controversial?
Because of the baggage.
Because I don't want that baggage. And until I have an identity separate from you, don't say anything. Once I have an identity, you go back to doing what you want. I will not say anything. But let me just figure out life for myself. Let people get to know me for me. I don't want to be in an interview being asked about her opinion. I want to be in an interview where people know me and then I have my own things to talk about.
Correct.
And I don't know how, but she agreed. I was very, very surprised at the fact that she agreed and very actually calmly was very receptive to it. Really caught me off guard. I thought it was going to have to be multiple arguments and multiple fights like I had for my phone and for my all my other things. But she was quite receptive to it. And even though she initially said, I'll see, I'll try, whatever, she didn't do it. For 2 years, she didn't. And it really helped me. It really helped me sort of figure out my own space, helped me figure out my own opinions, got people to get to know me. And then after that, she promptly started doing what she wanted to do again. That was great.
And what's the kind of advice that your grandfather's given you about life, relationships, and stuff like that? Has he said anything which seemed very complex at that time, but now makes so much sense, especially in terms of relationships?
You know, when you have so many relationships that have their great aspects of it and also have their downsides, which is why those relationships have ended. I think my mother and my grandfather both have this amazing ability to really hold on to the positive and let go of the negative. You know, I think there was always such a wonderful approach to exes in the family.
I was just going to say.
My nana was so friendly with all his ex-wives, is with the ones that are still around. And my mother as well, with all her partners, over the years, she's had such wonderful relationships with them. And even after they've ended, they've been such great parts of not only her lives, but even mine and my brother's lives. Because some of them are people we grew up with for years.
What are the red flags in a relationship? And what have you learned from your relationship? Since you were obviously a self-professed wild child.
So I think I've only actually had one proper relationship in my life. The wild child me, I don't think had any space for relationships. I don't think she even knew how to be in a relationship. But I've had one proper lovely relationship in my life. Honestly, the relationship had no red flags. I think I know it's not a very, I know it's slightly a red flag to call yourself a green flag, but I was a humongous red flag as a human being and very well aware about it.
Really?
Then when I was a rebellious person, I was a humongous red flag. I was the
Yeah.
horrible person to date. But then I think while my personality evolved and all of that happened, I became a humongous green flag. And I was so ready for a relationship because not only I didn't know how to be in a relationship and I was aware of that, so I used to watch educational YouTube videos on what makes a healthy relationship. So I was educated on it also. Not only was I a green flag. So I used to watch videos on what healthy communication is like before I'd even found someone, before I'd even started dating. Okay. So by the time I got into my relationship, my first proper relationship, I was so prepared.
Are you actually prepared when you get into a relationship?
Honestly, I feel like the foundation of a relationship is really important. If you start something in chaos, I feel like that chaos will almost always sustain. If you start something by setting the correct boundaries, the correct tones, the correct expectations, and a couple of more things, I think it sets a great tone for the rest of the relationship. Of course, things will go up and down, things happen in people's lives, circumstances happen that, of course, change things around. But basic things, establishing a tone of talking. For example, your first fight. If in your first fight it becomes a screaming fit, it's always going to be a screaming fit. If in your first fight you
You
stop the
can't
conversation,
plan that, no?
I don't know. I managed to do it quite well. I did. In the 5 years that I was with this person, I don't think there was even a single time where we actually raised our voices at each other and yelled. We argued a lot, but there was not a single time where there was yelling and screaming. Never. Except once when we were fighting about some Bollywood topic, about some fame versus talent, superstardom versus something that, but not on like a that was we got passionate about that. We were like, how can you? But no, this doesn't make sense. That, but I think you can. I think you can set the correct tone, the correct boundaries.
Which also brings me to my another favorite topic, mental health.
Yeah.
You know, as actors, you
Yeah.
go through so many ups and downs. Did you ever, the first time, say you went to a therapist or you spoke to a counselor? Because we're trying to normalize these
Correct, of course.
conversations, of course. So, would you like to talk about that?
I'll give you an example of something recent. I was having an extremely overwhelming week, where just like everything is just getting messed up. Everything one after the other is just leading into chaos. The simplest thing, the simplest days where it's like I have this to do, and then I'm done for the day. Not like there's 15 things, two things, but everything that can possibly go wrong before that, over there, on the way from here to here, over here, and then even after that has gone wrong. And multiple days of that. And amounts up to a lot. There was one day towards the end of that where I was having the godfather of all of those days. Okay, where literally on top of everything going wrong, my car's AC has also decided to conk off in this Bombay heat in the middle of everything. So not only am I struggling and in chaos on my way from one place to another, my AC is giving out hot air, not even neutral air, hot air. Okay. Put down the window, hot air. My skin is crawling. I'm like, even if it was just not hot air coming at me, we would have managed. I'm on the phone, I'm going for an event. My hair is getting chapta, sweat is falling, makeup is all over the place. I'm getting late because the previous something had gone wrong, which is why I'm late. Someone is panicking from here, someone's panicking from here. My outfit, something is going wrong. It was just non-stop. And my car had 5 minutes before that also gotten banged. It was just, I can't even explain. And in the car, I was like, I'm going to explode. And if I explode, I'm going to bite someone else's head off. Because everyone was being incompetent that day. Honestly, it was not my fault at all. I was doing everything correctly. Everything correctly. I woke up on time. I sat for hair and makeup on time. I gave enough time to fittings. I did everything. Everyone else was messing up. It was really not my fault. I said, I am going to bite someone's head off. And I said, I don't want to bite someone's head off because I don't want to ruin anyone else's day in the process of my day going badly.
Yeah.
So I sent a message on my group, my work group, and I said, guys, emergency mental health break needed. Can you clear this date to this date? I need to go. And they figured out that it could be done. One day up and down I had to figure. And I went. I took off to the mountains for 5 days. And I did a digital detox, did massages, nice therapies, acupuncture, reflexology, meditated for hours, finished reading 2 books in the span of 5 days. I just took that time for myself and just singularly focused on bringing back calm into my life. Worked really well, came back, and what, it's been 3 weeks since I've been back, and today I'm having one of those days again.
Oh dear,
So
I'm so sorry.
it's not very sustainable, but it did help me. Now imagine if I had not taken that time and actually
Correct.
recentered myself, then I don't know what I would have been like today,
Correct.
having continued with that. So sometimes you're not going to be able to take 5 days off. Sometimes a mental health break for me can be something as simple as canceling whatever plan I have later in the evening and staying in bed and just eating something that gives me comfort and watching Netflix just because I want to, and just doing something just because I want to. I mean, I think therapy for me was very different than what therapy is maybe like for other people, from what I think. Because in my head, I've already seen a problem
And
and I've already said, I think the root cause of this is this, and I think this has led me to be like this, and I think this is triggering this in me for this reason. So by the time I'm in therapy, I'm sort of answering all the questions before I can even be asked it. So sometimes what therapy really helped me with was maybe seeing it from a different perspective, because in my head I already had it figured out.
There's this huge nepotism debate, and
Yeah.
it's been debated endlessly. And you've gone through several auditions in your life, but has it been that you've lost out to a nepo kid, or a when you've been through several rounds and then finally, oh no, if they why did they make me go through all this if they were finally going to take an established actor, or has it happened?
This to happens a lot. Why did we even bother testing for this? Why did we go through all that headache if it was going to go to an established actor anyway? This to has happened a lot.
Yeah.
This to happens to every actor that's out there testing even now. That's an endless battle. But now you just go, it's practice. You know, at the end of the day, you're just getting practice. You're acting, so it's can't do any harm.
So is the system itself flawed? What is the so it's not about the flunking an audition at the end of the day.
I don't mind the system. I think it's great that people have to go out there and test now to get a role. I think it's wonderful because even when you get the role, you're also a little bit at peace that you have earned this role. You're actually right for this role, and some way you know how you want to approach the character and the script, and you know that you're already in the correct tune. Um, and plus it feels like you've accomplished something, you've got it, you've all of that. But I think what sometimes really bothers me with the casting process is sometimes casting directors have made up their mind. So it's not the director that has made up their mind, or the production house, or someone that's looking maybe at the overall best interest of the film. Sometimes it's the person at the root level that has already made up their mind about you and whether you fit in or not. And a lot of the time, maybe a director wants you to test for something, so they get you to do it, but the casting director is not keen on having you there.
So then
So
how do you work around that?
you can't, because another issue is I'm a full director's actor, and in that moment, the casting director is my director. And if you say do a scene like this, even if I feel like I actually should be doing it like this, I by default will end up doing it the way that they're expecting. Um,
Has it happened to you?
Oh, all the time, all the time. This तो happens to me regularly. This happens to me regularly, which is why now I'm like मैं self test ही कर लेती हूँ. I'll record it and then you can give me feedback on that. I'll record it as many times as you want, but I'll do a self test. So I'll send you many variations. आप देख लो आपको क्या अच्छा लग रहा है. Or I'll do it at the casting office also, and then I'll also record a self test and do my double work as I like to do. And then I complain about having too much to do, but this is my issue now. I do double work everywhere.
You're just an overthinker and an overworker.
Hugely,
right?
hugely. But now it is what it is, and everyone, I guess, has their own journeys when you're approaching a film. And I honestly think a lot of things are also just fate. If something is meant to actually work for you, it will work for you, and nothing will be able to stop it. And if something is not meant to happen, it just won't happen, no matter how much you chase it and pursue it. Also, you never know how anything's going to turn out. I shot 2 films simultaneously, Bade Miyan Chote Miyan and Shrikant. And Bade Miyan Chote Miyan was a film that I so desperately wanted, I can't even begin to tell you. I prepped for it, I auditioned for it because I needed that big commercial film. And even though the film didn't work, it still did a lot for me. So no regrets at the end of the day at all. Got to work with some wonderful people, got to learn a lot. But in the moment, I thought Bade Miyan Chote Miyan was going to be what was going to make me. And Shrikant turned out to be the hit. It was so random. I shot them both simultaneously, and so you just never know. You just never know. Of course, I knew Shrikant was a special film. Of course, we all knew that. But Badi Miyan Choti Miyan was also a special film for me. And you just never know how things turn out also. So sometimes it's best to have fate just do what it needs to do. Freddie, which was one of my films that people have loved so much. I got that film 2 weeks before their shooting began. I was already on another shoot. By chance, it came to me. So, things just happen.
When a performance like Freddie goes unnoticed, or something that you worked very hard on, so what are your learnings from stuff like that?
So, honestly, out of the three that you named now, which is Almost Pyar, Freddy, and U Turn, Almost Pyar was actually the only one that actually went unnoticed. U Turn was the one that reached a very different audience than the one that normally watches it. For example, if I go to someone's home, uh, their didis in their home will be like, "ये तो U-turn वाली है ना?" They are the ones that have seen U-turn. They've seen U-turn. I go to the most random at airports. People will come up to be like, "आप तो U-turn में थे ना?" That's not what people, probably not what you guys have seen. But the most random people all over have seen U-turn. The people I would have never expected to. So U-turn has found its audience, which surprised me also, which even I was not aware of at that time, but it really did. Freddie was a performance that I wanted to have done better because I had less prep time, and we all know by now prep and me being neurotic about it because I got onto it so last minute. I didn't feel like I did it as well, but people gave it a lot of love. Almost Pyar is by far my best performance I've ever done yet, but no one has seen the film. So that is a bummer. When I know that by far it is my strongest performance, but I know that the film didn't work, so people didn't watch it, but it's a performance that I'm so proud of.
So how did you crack your first audition? Like, I mean, you must have gone through several rounds.
Yeah.
When you did Jawaani, Jaaneman, and then you were cast opposite Saif and Taboo. So these are established
course.
veterans. How did you, there is a process, like a director is convinced about another actor, but then you have to convince him you are the right person. How did it finally all sort of just merge?
Jawaani Jaaneman was one of those crazy things where the first time I'd ever heard of Jawaani Jaaneman was when one of my friends was testing for it. And at that time, I was in acting class. I was just generally in acting class, and my friend was coming after. And she came and she had to record this test to send. And my sir, Ritesh sir, was like, "Hey, just run the lines with her and just like go over it." So I was doing the lines with her and everything. So that's the first time I actually read a scene from Jawaani Jaaneman. And she was doing it, and I was giving her notes. I was like, you know what? I actually stayed on then for her class. I was like, you know what? If I was doing it, I think I would do it like this. I was like, try and take this line this way. And I was really trying to help her get the best test. But I had such a strong opinion on how that scene would happen and how that scene was supposed to look. And her test went well, whatever, she sent it, and months passed, and then I think someone reached out to my agency or something saying, "Hey, would Alaya like to test for this or whatever?" And at that point, I was like, "Oh yeah, I know about this film. I think I heard about it when my friend was testing for it, and found out casting had not been done. They're still looking for people, all of that." And at that time we were not sure because we were like, "Oh, it's a father daughter film," and again, people don't think it's a typical debut, and all of that was going on. And then a few days later, in one day, Jawaani Jaaneman came to me from four different angles. One, my father, who at the time would very sweetly, any newspaper article that he'd see that had to do with any films that were happening, he'd click a photo of it and send it to me saying, "What about this?" That was his way of helping, like, because he's not a Bollywood guy at all. But he'd see something, this film is casting something, let's send it to Al's. Maybe she'll, So he sent me a photo of that. Through my PR at that time, they had mentioned something about it to me. My agency had mentioned it to me, and my mother from somewhere. And I just remember it came to me from four different, and I was like, "My God, I've been hearing about this film all day." I was like, maybe it's a sign. I said, "Yeah, let's just go test. Let's just go test, and let's go ahead with it." That's that. I went, I tested. Then I met Jayu sir. My test went well, and Then Jayu sir said we have to go meet Nitin sir. He was like, I like your test, we like your test. Sef sir's also seen it, Nitin sir's seen it. I've seen it, we all like it, we're all, in agreement on this. But Nitin sir still has to meet you to, um, see further. And he was shooting Notebook in Kashmir at that time. So we flew down to Kashmir for one day, and we had dinner with Nitin sir. And I went back to my room that night, and I got a message from Jayu sir saying, I guess it's safe to say, welcome to the film. That was that. And that's how it worked out. And honestly, Jaaneman is one of those films I can't imagine anyone else having done it. I can't. It was like that role was written for me.
So, how do you deal with the anxieties of an actor, and how do you deal with stuff on a daily basis? Like, what are you doing currently with that? Occupies a lot of your mind space, and is not being in a relationship one of the better things? Like, can you handle a relationship and work?
I actually really, again, it depends on the person. Now, I only speak with the experience of one person who was a very lovely person. And so, in that situation, the relationship brought me a lot of grounding, which was really beneficial with the type of person I am. Because when I'm working and I'm going crazy and I'm all over the place and I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed, it's nice to sort of either at the end of the day be able to call someone or meet someone that brings you peace, that somehow by default makes you feel calm. So in that situation, being in a relationship was really lovely. It didn't take away from my work at all. Didn't Yeah, it didn't distract me. It didn't make me feel like I had too much on my plate. It made me feel like I had a place to escape to when I needed to.
Is there pressure to look a certain way? Like I said, all of you live
Yeah.
through the Instagram world. Is there like a pressure to use fillers, Botox, do correctional surgery, stuff like that? Is it considered the norm? And I mean, have you been pressured by anyone? Do you succumb to stuff like that?
I have not been pressured by anyone also because I refuse to surround myself with people that feel the need to. Not that I think there's any, I have to again say it, there's nothing wrong with getting anything done. You do what you want to do, but do it because you want to do it. I just actively would not surround myself or even have those people around that would tell me that I need to get something done. Uh, yeah, it's just not something that would happen. So no, I've not been
Were you
pressured.
ever told, okay, you have a pointed nose or a crooked nose, or
The
it's
thing is,
like,
I've told myself all these things time and time over as a teenager and as when you're growing up figuring it out. Then I reached a point of absolute and complete self-love. No matter what goes on up and down in my life and every day, no matter how irritated, stressed out, whatever, that's a one equation that I've held very close to myself.
self.
My equation with myself. And so I have told myself everything, and that doesn't mean that till now. Uh, Quite often I say, yeah, I want to go and get this done to my nose. I'm going to do it. Doesn't mean that I'm saying, oh my god, my nose sucks and I hate my nose. I want to do it. But I'm like, yeah, might look better. Will I ever do it? Probably not. I'm a big bhattu. I've said this 100 times. I'm probably never going to get anything done. If I had to, I should have gotten it done by now. Now, in the middle of everything, I don't want my nose to change. I'll feel funny about it. Plus, also, when you're growing up, your face is also changing. I had a lot of baby fat on my face. Over time, it started slimming down. Then over the last few days I've been eating really badly, so again a little puffiness and all has come. But I think I've just become very okay with a lot of things. And over time, if there are things later on that I feel like I want to do or want to whatever, then those are conversations for that time. As of now, I'm in a perpetual cycle of every few months saying, hi, I want to do this to my nose, this small thing, and then never doing it. I don't think it's ever going to happen also. And if it happens, I'll tell everyone. Like, I'm not one to say, nahi, nahi, maine kuch nahi kiya. I'll talk about it very happily. My mother gets her Botox done and she posts a selfie saying, just with my fresh new fillers and Botox, this is how I've been raised. So there's absolutely no shame, no weirdness about it.
Nice. Have you dealt with toxicity at the workplace?
Sets are stressful places for everyone involved. There is a lot of there are many different hierarchies that happen, whether it's junior, senior, whether it's sometimes male, female. I shouldn't say this because every time I say this, the headlines misconstrue everything and they associate it to different things. But of course, there are sets that are not great work environments, but there are sets that are great work environments also. And sometimes it's just about having bad days. I don't know. Sets are stressful environments. They're not. Except for my first film. My first film was just a breeze. I don't know how Jawaani Jaaneman happened, but start to finish, it was just the best. After that, I actually experienced the industry. There are good days, bad days, good sets, bad sets.
This is not an headline.
No, but people will take headlines from this interview. This happens. This happens
But why
all
is
the
it
time.
that female actors, I mean, is that a norm that are the PRs pitting one against the other?
Not the
managers?
PRs necessarily, not the managers or PRs. I just think generally it becomes a habit of
You're competing for the same kind of rules. So you're probably dating the same kind of men. So that creates the stress.
no, I think it's not. No, I just think it's people are just used to just putting people in states of comparison. Sometimes where it's really not necessary. Whether it's like, oh, I like your outfit more than what she's wearing. I'm like, just tell me you like my outfit. Why do you need to say I like your outfit more than what she's wearing? Or vice versa. My point is, why does it have to be this? You're not comparing. I've never had this happen with a male actor where it's like, I like your outfit more than what he's wearing. It usually happens. No one's bothered about that. So like these small things, I'm like, but what's the need? Because if you hear enough of these small things to someone that's not attuned to filtering it out, it will somehow sink into your subconscious. You will also sort of start associating everything in a competitive way. It's not the type of person I am. I've been a girl's girl through and through. My closest friends are girls. So you can't really put me in that sort of environment where I'm going to get competitive and catty with another uh,
You don't see
female.
that sort.
I'm not. I'm really not. Especially not with a woman. Because for me, then that's about like we're breaking stereotypes. How are people thinking that we're going to do this? We need to be there and support and uplift and empower each other. I'm very much that. So yeah, those moments are irritating.
Okay, I've been asked by these millennial kids to ask you questions. So, Gen Z slang.
Huh.
In a relationship, have you ever breadcrumbing?
Breadcrumbing is when you give people little
Yes, so
hope and whatever, and then
See, she
In a-
knows.
I was hoping I knew. In a relationship, maybe not, but like in the pursuing, of course, you must have to keep people on their toes.
Benching.
What is benching?
Explain benching to her. Resham?
It's like when you are not committing to them as a relationship.
You're on the bench.
Yes.
They're on the bench. Okay. See, again, this is so wrong for me because I've only been in one relationship in my life, and that was
But
very
you've
healthy.
been a wild child, so you must have been benching.
That time
them.
benching, yeah. Then though I must have been benching lots of people. Huh. Then the
tell me-
breadcrumbing, benching, whatever you. I have also been breadcrumbed and benched. It was just chaos.
Yeah. Have you been in any kind of situation now that you're single? Have
Yeah.
you been in any kind of situationship?
No, my problem is no. I've become a relationship girl now. I don't want to do any of the
You're not
chaos.
a
I
bad
don't.
girl.
No, I can't also now. You just when you get used to like a certain amount of trust and intimacy and just comfort, now to let go of all of that and be in chaos in a relationship space is then too much. Then my work has too much chaos. Then I don't have time for all of that. So I'm just chilling, enjoying life, letting people try and then enjoying the attention and then not doing anything with it.
Why are you not doing anything with it?
Because I need to actually be invested in someone to want to pursue it now. I can't just do things for time pass. I have enough things to do in the day anyway. Like I don't want to add in.
But there are also biological impulses, hormones.
No, that's okay. All that I can manage well. All that I can manage well. But it's just too much. It's too much stress. I don't want to take that stress only.
What's the worst piece of advice that you've ever received?
Don't worry about the acting. Just focus on how you're looking. I was like, the problem is I can't. I can't. It's not my natural impulse to be on a set and say, touch up, come for touch up now, you know, in the middle of like, I'm about to cry and be like, acha, theek hai, do my touch up in the middle now. I hate it. I want to be able to act on an acting set. I hate that I have to, in fact, that's, I think, was taken away from the rawness of what I had in my first two films. Just constantly now having to think about so many more things and becoming more technical with my approach rather than instinctive. So yeah, I think that.
What's the worst date that you've been on?
I'm blanking. I'm honestly blanking. But what I would do if there was a really bad date also happening, I would then sort of call one of my friends that was around, and then it would become like a social fun evening. And I would not make the guy pay. I've always been a 50-50 person anyway. So I would call my other friends, and then we'd all have a good time so everyone goes home happy. You know, it's not like I have to suffer through the date, neither does he have to suffer through anything. We can all have good memories and know that that was that. That's what I've done on bad dates. There was one bad date where someone was saying something very obnoxious. I cannot remember the exact details of it. I'll think about it for next time.
Do you follow Rakhi Sawant?
So I was following Rakhi Sawant, and I think there was one point where she put up some video of some she was on a toilet seat saying some potty something, and I was like, this is too much. So I think at that time I had unfollowed her. But she's an icon. I mean, she's such a vibrant personality. Even if you're not following Rakhi Sawant, you're following Rakhi Sawant. You can't not follow Rakhi Sawant.
Okay, what do you think of Urfi's fashion sense?
I think it's bold. I think it's creative. I think it takes guts to do what she does. And now people are all turning around and saying, oh wow, more power to Urfi. But I'm sure there was a lot that came before that. And there was a lot that came before that. We all saw it on social media. It's not easy sticking to your guns and being unapologetically yourself when there is so many people that are disapproving of what you're saying, especially in a public time like now where every comment is just heard and read and amplified.
Does that bother you? That, you know, every comment will get misconstrued?
Comments that are misconstrued, yes, but comments as a whole, you can't control that. I hate when comments are misconstrued. That I can't handle. When I say things in an interview and the headline says something totally different, I'm like, मैंने बोला ही नहीं. That's the worst. My team is exhausted with me finding articles and saying, why is this written like this? This is not what I said. This is not what I... all of that. So yeah, misconstrued bothers me a lot, but comments are going to happen. So yeah, I think she's very, very brave.
What are the red flags that you see in a co-star?
Oh, biggest red flag in any actor in general. I've been fortunate that has not happened to me, but I've heard stories of this happening to other people where the actors basically only bothered about their take. But I was so lucky, even someone like a Sef sir, who really didn't need to be there to cue me on like 2 lines here and there, would always be there.
Nice.
I thought that was incredible. For my first film, I was a total newbie. He didn't need to, but he did.
What turns you on in a man?
Kindness, maturity, and dependability. Are you looking for a physical feature?
No.
Physical feature?
I'm looking for a physical feature, but you are not.
Physical feature. Okay, physically, I like men that look like they can pick me up and throw me around. You know, just like generally, like I'm this tiny, petite, whatever girl, but I like taller, very hyper masculine looking men. I don't like the. My type is not the delicate looking boys. I don't like pretty boys. Yeah, I like people that look like they can mess people up for you but won't ever do that. I don't like fighters. But I like people that look like that.
Have you ever passed out in a party?
Yeah. What do you mean? I was a rebellious wild child and I didn't pass out at a party. Passed out, woke up, partied again, passed out again, multiple times in one night. Party doesn't stop when you pass out.
So now I'll move on to the audience who wants to ask you some questions.
So is there a weird thing that you've done after a bad or a sad breakup? Like, I'll remove my WhatsApp DP. I'll have a friends marathon. Things like that.
So you know when BBM was a thing? Yeah. I won't count that as relationships because again, anything before this one relationship I don't count as relationships. But you know when you had like a breakup or you're upset with someone, you put like a dot on your BBM status or like a nothing, or you make your display picture something just fully black. All of that we've done. what other things, when you purposely listen to sad songs and make yourself cry extra. Although being an actor, one weird thing is now when I cry and I'm having a good cry, I'm like, I should look at how I'm looking in this moment so I can, channel it when I'm doing a scene. This is a big issue. I can't cry in peace now. Every single time I cry, I have this compulsive need to see my face to see how I'm emoting. So that's changed since I've become. So yeah, we've all done weird things after a breakup. What else? I've done so many weird things. Binge eating, just like, you're feeling dirty emotionally, so you want to feel dirty in every way. Binge eating,
So
just like.
considering you're a fitness freak, that doesn't come in then. Then you can like eat a 12-inch pizza.
I'm a very balanced fitness freak in the sense that I work out because I know that I'm also chaotic on the other end and I will do stuff like this. So I need to balance my life out. Plus I have PCOS, so I really need to keep balance because weight comes up like this and then it takes a long time to go down. So it's all about balance. It does not mean, there's lots of times. I just posted this video where I was jumping onto this ball and doing this.
And you fell down, I guess.
The falling down happened the next day. That one day, I was just killing it. What was I doing the night before? I was at Soho House having multiple tequilas and having butter chicken and dal makhani. But the next morning, I went and I killed it. That night, I went to sleep early and I was like, great, I've had a fantastic day today. I want to have an even better day tomorrow. Kept falling. So, there's no formula. I keep a balance of everything.
I had seen this project that you had done in your final year where I think there was a lady and you had poured like different colors on it, if you remember clearly.
Yeah.
Could you tell me the backstory behind it and like what was the thought that went behind you taking it up for your final year?
That was actually not my final year project at NYU. That was the project I made to send with my application to NYU to hopefully get admission there. The funny story about that was that I didn't realize that the deadline for the film school something was a month earlier than the deadline generally for admissions. And so it was the night before we had to submit it that I found out that I had to submit it that night. And I was like, what do you mean? My mother and I were panicking and I was like, because I really wanted to go to NYU. And I was like, what do? I need to make a project. And the woman in that is my mother. And what did I do? I went to Art Station. I bought a shitload of paint, glitter, ropes, I don't know what. I just got anything and everything I could think of. We went up to my terrace and I said, okay, mama, just cooperate. And I don't know what I was doing. I made this, I had a thought behind it, which was it was basically a woman that goes from being free to then being chained by the end. It was basically showing what a lot of my pieces at that time were about what society does to you, because I was also rebellious, open, wild, whatever. So my whole thing was, so I won't go into much about what the thing was supposed to mean, because the story behind it was just so hilarious, because something that was supposed to mean something so deep was me throwing paint at my mother yelling, me throwing glitter, and poor thing, my mother couldn't get glitter out of her hair for weeks after that. Your hands being tied up and put on. I had attached to some clothing wire, my brother holding some torch from on top while I'm throwing something more. It was just complete and utter chaos. And I think that's where you realize a mother's true love, because I don't think anyone would have let me do that to them. It was not even body paint. It was like proper like acrylic paint or something, like it was not even, but she let me do whatever I needed to do, and it turned out pretty nice. Thank you.
Okay, here's hoping you have many more good days, happy days and less stressful days.
Thank
and
you.
Just continue being the wonderful, wonderful girl.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Break it down.